Creamery. My name's Claire. I'm hopefully going to make a small Wensleydale cheese. So we nicknamed that one the baby Wensleydale. It's a 500 gram size or a pound of cheese, that one. This one we actually make it as a special now for Christmas time. It was one that we used to make all the time, but now it's a special. Usually goes on sale in November and it's usually sold out by Christmas. But we make traditional Yorkshire Wensleydale all year round, but this size just for Christmas now. When I make the cheese in the kitchen, I'm going to talk about how we actually make cheese on the factory floor as well. I'm not sure how many of you have already been over to the other part of the cheese experience yet. Have any of you been over? No. None of you been over there at all? No. So after the demonstration in here, you'll be able to go over to the next building. In there, it's more about the science of cheese making. There's cheese tasting in there. My colleague Julian will be at that area. There's 8 cheeses to talk about and taste. And right at the very end, you will see the viewing gallery for the factory floor. So on a weekend, the cheesemakers, they're lucky, they get the weekend off. So when you go down and have a look at the viewing gallery, then there's nobody actually making cheese down there today. You might see some lab technicians doing some testing or something like that down there, but they're not actually making cheese. So I'll talk about the process when I'm making it in the kitchen. When you do go down and have a look, your eyes are naturally drawn to the table vats that are in front of you, but up on the right hand side there are 4 tall closed vats, and that's where the start of the cheese making process begins. So it all goes on in those tall vats first of all. So even though the cheesemakers get the weekend off, the cows don't. The cows still have to be milked. So we've got a tanker delivering milk out there at the moment. So they will still bring the milk in on the weekend, and then it's stored in the silos here until so the cheesemaker's next shift tomorrow morning is 2 o'clock. That's when they start to make cheese, 2 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So they bring in milk from 39 local farms, all within a 40-mile radius. For the baby Wensleydale, I'm going to need 8 pints of milk. So 8 pints, or 4.5 litres. So 8 pints makes the pound of cheese. So what we say about the milk, they're typically small herds of Frisian cows. They will all be grazing on the limestone pastures in the dales. All those wildflowers and herbs, that's what makes a big difference to the taste of the milk and then the taste of Wensleydale cheese. We pasteurise the milk. That kills all the bacteria in the milk. We do need some good bacteria in there to start making cheese though. So we will add our own starter culture to the milk. So that's the good bacteria, and we will add that, and that will be fed into one of those big vats on the factory floor. So that's our starter culture. That's unique to us. So we produce that starter culture here ourselves. Most cheesemakers use mass-produced starter culture, but we produce that here ourselves. So unique to us. What the starter culture does is sour the milk, turns the lactose into lactic acid. We use 3 times more starter culture to make traditional Yorkshire Wensleydale than when we're making cheddar cheese. So, and that amount of starter culture adds to the science of the crumbliness of Wensleydale as well. Basically what we've got there is a really posh Yakult. So if you're making cheese at home, you could use a live yogurt. That will sour the milk as well. That will be in the vat, mechanically stirred in for 1 hour and 10 minutes. Then the cheesemakers add rennet. So that's our rennet. We buy that in. It's a plant-based rennet. Historically, for cheese making, animal-based rennet was used. Plant-based is what we use, and that means that all of our cheeses are vegetarian friendly. Plant-based is sourced from the heads of thistle plants. When they were using animal-based rennet, it was sourced from the lining of a calf's stomach. So what the rennet is an enzyme. What it does is curdle the milk or coagulate the milk. So it'll set the milk basically. 40 minutes, they'll have that in the vat, and then what they should have is something called junket or a milk jelly. That's what they should have in the vat. Anybody ever had junket pudding before?
No.
Yeah. So usually it's a bit split when I mention junket. It's either people, their eyes will light up, fond memories of having junket, or they'll start to shudder at the thought of having junket. So sounds like you liked it, yeah. So people have told me that they would put jam on it, maybe to sweeten it, sprinkle sugar on it. There's a lot of people that have said they were giving it in boarding school if they were fasting and they had an illness. That would be the first food that was introduced. So nutritious pudding, and hopefully that's what I should have in here. So in my bowl, I'm likening this to one of those big vats on the factory floor. I'd already added the starter culture to the milk, and I'd added the rennet as well. So hopefully if I put my hand in, if you look on the screen, like that. So we've got the milk jelly. Basically this is what little Miss Muffet was eating, curds and whey. And they have now mechanical knives that'll cut into the curds and whey, and they'll do it in grids. So I'll just show you what it looks like. So, do you fancy that with some jam on? Usually children aren't very impressed when I mention that. So it starts to separate the curds from the whey. The next thing they're going to do in that closed vat, they're going to scald the curds. So we call it scalding. They have a double skin wall in their vat. They have an element inside. They bring the temperature up to 33 degrees. That creates a steam jacket, and it just hardens the shell of the curd. I'm going to just show you what. So most people say, oh, it looks like scrambled egg now. So it separates the curds and the whey. So it's just changes the structure of the curds. The cheesemakers, they're keeping a close eye on the acidity levels in the vat. When that level is right, the cheesemaker is going to pitch the vat. So that's moving everything out of the big closed vat into the table vat now. So all the curds and whey will rise to the top, and then they have filters at either end, and they'll expel all of the whey, and they want to have nice spongy curd to work with then on the tabletop. So I'm going to use my colander to catch the curds in here. Sometimes a bit of splash zone in the front. So only 15% of the milk in here is going to make cheese. 85% of it is going to be the whey byproduct. So that's why it seems like it's such a lot of milk to make that pound-sized cheese. Historically, when they were making cheese on the farmhouse, the whey would have gone to feed the pigs. Here last year we made 4,500 tons of cheese, so that's going to be a lot of whey that we need to do something with. So we've got our own whey processing unit here, and that's a way of extracting the fats, proteins, sugars from the whey, and then recycling that on. So the first thing we get is a whey cream. The whey cream is what makes our Yorkshire butter. So in the shop we sell the Yorkshire butter. That's made from the whey cream. We get a whey protein solution. Whey protein solution is then sold on to make whey powder. Whey powder, that's the big money one, that's the protein shakes. bodybuilders, hot chocolate has whey powder in it, infant formula whey powder. We also get a lactose solution. The lactose solution, they extract the lactose solution and that goes to a biogas plant at Leeming Bar, just near Northallerton, and they will convert that into green energy down there. So, yeah, they'll convert the lactose solution into green energy, anaerobic digestion. There's a gin distillery at Massam. They make us a Wensleydale gin, and they add some of the whey at the same time as the botanicals. So they use botanicals that pair nicely with Wensleydale cheese. So pink lady apples, walnuts and celery. And it's a London dry gin method that they use as well. After they've extracted all those things, the whey goes through a reverse osmosis, turns it into a polished water. Polished water is what's used then to clean out everything in the whey processing unit itself. So I'm trying to just expel more whey out of the curds. Just want to try and get nice spongy curd. On the factory floor, they will work the curds. They've got a big mechanical paddle on the table, but they will have big blue shovels that they will lift the curds up with. They'll put them on top, so they'll stack the curds. That just helps to expel more whey. This process is actually called cheddaring. So they are quite hands-on on the tables, but obviously they've got a lot of cheese in there, so they are going to use the shovels to stack the curds, expel more whey. This is more of an artisan way, and the process is called cheddaring. So I'll just tell you, this pound-sized cheese, it was Edward Chapman who opened the first creamery in Hawes that introduced that size. 1897, he opened the first creamery. So in that picture there with the turquoise background, in that building there, that was the first creamery in Hawes. It's a private house now, still standing in Hawes. We came to this site in 1953. Edward Chapman was a corn merchant and a provisions merchant, and he used to deliver his goods to the local farms. Sometimes they worked a bit on a barter still. If the cheese, sometimes he'd be paid for his goods in cheese. If the cheese was an inferior quality, the recipe did vary farmhouse to farmhouse, then he wouldn't be able to mature the cheese, he wouldn't be able to sell it. So he decided he would open the creamery, make Wensleydale cheese on a more commercial scale, have a consistent size and a consistent recipe. That was meant to be a good size for a family of 4 for the week, that size. It was a grocer in Leeds that asked him to produce this pound-sized cheese. Most people would go into the grocers and ask for a pound of cheese and a pound of butter for the week. So it saved the grocer a lot of time cutting into a big round and weighing and measuring. So I don't know if that's going to last in, most people sort of look and say that's not going to last in our house for a week. We did have one lady, one day she said that's more like a Friday night size. So we've got nice spongy curd. I'll just show you what the curds look like. So we've got nice spongy curd. Cheesemakers are going to add salt next. Salt adds flavour, acts as a preservative, but also it does expel more whey. They don't add this much salt on the factory floor. You will gasping. It helps to expel more whey, so I'm adding more salt. Nobody's going to eat this, it's just for demonstration. It takes them about 4.5 hours to make cheese on the factory floor, so it just helps to expel a bit more whey. I'm not going to keep you all here for 4.5 hours. So they mix the salt in. They add the salt by hand, actually. They have a specific amount in their bucket, throw it all on top of the curds by hand. It's table salt that they use. Then once the salt's mixed in, the curds go through a miller. So the miller machine breaks the curds up into baked bean sized curds like this. If you were here during the week and they were making cheese, when you go down and have a look, there's a conveyor belt on the left hand side, and it's a conveyor belt with a blue lining on it. You would normally see the curds just being milled on the conveyor belt, just like this, and then it's going up into an area where the moulds are filled. So it goes up a little incline into an area where the moulds are filled. That's the plastic mould. Up until about 2018, the cheesemakers here used to hand fill all the moulds. So there's pictures of that going on around the place. Top right hand side, those cheesemakers in that picture hand filling those moulds, they still actually work here today. But apparently it was quite a back-breaking job to do it like that. So even though it looks like they're having a great time at work in that picture, big smiles on their faces, it maybe was the last day that they had to do it like that. Yeah, apparently was quite back-breaking. So it's automated now, and also all the table mats on the factory floor are also higher to what they used to be, just for their benefits, to make life easier to work. And right next to the mould filler is an area where we call the pressing area. So all the moulds will go to be pressed, all on shelves, and traditional Yorkshire Wensleydale is going to be pressed for 24 hours. So it has hydraulics at either end, large area where they're all pressed. We make the Kit Calvert Wensleydale. I don't know if any of you have already tried this today in the shop at all for tasting. Kit Calvert Wensleydale is more of the farmhouse style recipe. So it's pressed for longer, that one will be a 48-hour press. Much more buttery taste and a Dutch cheese texture to that one, not the crumbly Wensleydale like this one. So hopefully now we should have a little bit of a ta-da moment. My hands never really work as well as hydraulics, but you can help me count down from 3. We go 3, 2, 1. Now they call it bandaging, so they'll bandage the cheese into a cheesecloth, so when they empty the mould it'll be bandaged and carefully turned in the first few weeks. It's carefully turned, stops the moisture settling in one area, also gives it a good shape, also by turning it, avoids having Mary Berry's worst nightmare. So mine will start to have a soggy bottom before we finish. So traditional Yorkshire Wensleydale, 6 to 8 weeks to mature. It's a white, mild, crumbly cheese. Traditionally here in Wensleydale we eat it with fruitcake, apple pie. My favourite is mince pie at Christmas. I can't eat a mince pie without a bit of Wensleydale cheese. It does tend to be a Yorkshire thing. I don't know how many of you have already had it with fruitcake before. Some of you maybe. So it is really nice with fruitcake. So we do have it in the cafe as well. But yeah, if you get a chance to try fruitcake from Wensleydale, it's really nice. We make a blue Wensleydale as well. So blue Wensleydale, does everybody like blue cheese? What we say is our blue is very mild and creamy. So if you're not really keen on blue, to just give ours a try when you go over to tasting. It's a very creamy blue. we add a blue mould culture, penicillin rock 40. When that is added to the milk, then they pierce the cheese when it's maturing. So about day 10, they pierce the cheese. When the air hits the mould, that's when you get that blue veining appearing then. Wensleydale with cranberries, still one of our best sellers. It's the one that we export the most. Blended cheese. There's a screen, a screen over on the other side that'll show you how we put the cranberries in the cheese. So that'll show you how that's done. But it came about because they came up with the idea for this one. Our late managing director had a friend that was over visiting from the USA, and they were in the local pub at Redmire trying to come up with new marketing ideas. And the friend just happened to be a cranberry farmer, so that's why they paired those two together. We were the first to put cranberries with cheese. It wasn't our first blended cheese. One of the first was the one with ginger, which you will have a sample of that when you go over to the other part. But this one, yes, much copied as well, this one, but we were the first to do this one. While the cheeses are maturing, we have our cheese graders. So in that picture there, we've got Norman cheese grader. They've got the best job. There's a few of them. They will, so 10:30 every day, cheese grading time. They go off. It takes them about half an hour to grade a cheese. They will, so they all have other jobs on site as well, but then they change to do cheese grading as well. They'll take a bore out of the cheese with a cheese iron, and they will take a third of that, plug it straight back into the cheese, and check for taste, texture, smell. That's the one they will always check out of a batch each time while it's maturing. They'll have, I call it a batch, but it's actually the table number, so it'll be that table bat number. And then they check taste, texture, smell. It's not till they say it's ready that it goes off for distribution. So they decide where it's going and when it's ready to go. My colleague always says Norman's a bit like the man from Del Monte. So when he says yes, then it can go off for distribution. Then I usually ask if I've got a little volunteer that will come and put a sticker on the cheese for me.